Hi, it's Dr. Jenn Kennedy. I'm a sexologist and couples therapist. The Pleasure Project podcast is about sex and relationships. So this includes discussions on desire, dysfunction, dissatisfaction, exploration of all things sex related. So sometimes I'll do toy reviews and we'll look at trends, and sometimes I'll also enlist other experts. We'll increase your insight and enhance your pleasure. So tune in. Hi, in this episode, I do a case study. I talk about Dana and Dominic. They are a couple that came in to get help with intimacy, and I just sort of talk about their case. I go through some specifics about them and the goals that they came in with, which was to build intimacy and to help with communication, and just talk through what they're facing and how to give them support. So tune in. Hi, welcome back. So this is the beginning of a series that I'm doing that is case studies. So I hear a lot of feedback that people are really interested to know more about what happens on the inside of the clinical room. So I figured I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to start talking about cases that I've worked on and kind of give you a snapshot of what happens when I sit down, because there's just all this information that's sort of swirling in my head. And as I'm talking to clients, working out different cases and challenges with people, and I figure I'm going to bring you in and help you be part of that and see, kind of help you understand what we do on the clinical side. So let's start today with this case. I'm going to introduce you to a couple named Dana and Dominic. They are in their mid-30s. They are a mixed race couple, and they're both professionals working in the tech industry. So they're both really very good looking people. Dana is articulate. She is self-assured. She is really confident in her job. I will say in the relationship, she's a little more self-conscious. They're coming into me because they want help with their sex life. And I would say that she's more confident in her workspace than she is in the relationship. She wants to please. She wants to please in work, but she's more in the relational piece, wanting to get support. She doesn't like to not know what she's doing. And I think sometimes that comes up relationally. She finds it hard to tap into her erotic side. Like, she doesn't shift gears easily. She finds it easier to be in control. She finds Dominic attractive, but she doesn't always know how to let go. She doesn't know how to express that. It's harder for her sometimes to just be reactive, reflexive, just sort of like, in that space. It's harder for her to shift into that. Let's see what else. She doesn't know it. I made some notes to myself here. She doesn't know it consciously, but I think she finds it exciting that he pushes her boundaries. He's less mainstream, and I think she does like that part, but also it stresses her out a bit because I think, he's pushing her to her edge. She's also balancing work stress, parenting stress. They have a young child, and the partnership. Dana is bisexual, and she has remained good friends with her ex-girlfriend. Dominic is very handsome. He's reserved, and that comes up in our sessions. He was raised in a more conservative faith, but he has left that faith behind. He still feels a very deep sense of duty. He does not observe the faith, but he's active in the family. So with Dana, he's very flirtatious. He likes texting. He likes role playing. He likes teasing. He likes spanking. He's sort of expressive. And I think it's almost a counterpoint to the faith-based position of rigidity. So he feels oftentimes very shut down by her rigidity. He sees her, and I think if anything, his playfulness sometimes makes her more rigid. So he feels sometimes shame because she pulls back, and she probably pulls back because he's being playful. So it's this cause and effect. So he feels shame when, his overtures aren't met. He likes, I think, in part that she's a good girl, and yet it also triggers some of his bad boy pieces. I think he's intrigued by it, but then also sometimes disappointed by it. And that's just what couples do, right? We like something about somebody, and then we're also frustrated by it. Kind of the best qualities of our partners sometimes are also their biggest liabilities. I see this all the time in all kinds of couples. So why did he pick her? That's always a question I ask, is like, this thing you're coming in and complaining about is also why you chose that person, because in their best days, like their best qualities are also their liabilities. So it's part of why you chose them. So what does it say about him that he chose her for these qualities? Maybe it's her being a good girl, her being attractive and appropriate and really successful in the work zone or in the mom zone or whatever, probably reflects on him, and he likes that. Also, he likes the idea of her queerness because that makes her less like straight and narrow. But he also feels some degree of threat about her queerness because her queerness keeps her in relationship with her ex-girlfriend. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, but it is that way because she's chosen to stay in relationship with her girlfriend, her ex-girlfriend. So he admires that on one hand, but he also finds it threatening on the other hand, because they seem to have a relationship that is different, and at times he feels kind of threatened by it. So that just adds a dimension that they're coming in the room with. So they have a closeness that's different. So parenthood has pulled Dana and Dominic into responsibility, right? They were kind of more playful early on before the child came. And now they have to have more scheduling. They have to be more practical. That's just kind of what parenthood sometimes does to people. They have to have jobs. I mean, they were heading towards being professionals anyway, but they have to have jobs. They have to have schedules. They have to manage their substance use in a way they didn't before. It's just like things got real. They're also at that age anyway. They're in their early 30s where career starts to set in and they start climbing the ladder of success and that type of thing. So it was kind of on that track anyway. So in a way, they've been tamed, and sometimes they miss their early life where they could just jet around and do fun things, So sometimes people grieve their earlier lives where they could just be footloose and fancy free kind of thing. That changes as you age if you choose to go down a professional track or a parenting track or that type of thing. So they're coming into the therapy room with the goals of increasing intimacy, increasing communication. That is like the number one thing people, mostly couples, say to me is increase communication. That means different things to different people, but it's kind of like the most common thing people say. I would also say reduce tension. And in particular, when they talk about topics related to sex or sexuality, including her bisexuality. So sometimes when they get into these topics, it feels very thorny and tangled. So just being able to talk about this stuff because it feels loaded. And when they talk about anything related to their sex or lack of sex or their intimacy or what they want or what they wish they were having or anything, it just escalates so quickly, and then one or both of them shut down, and then it feels really sad and they don't really understand. It's like each of them have a lot of anxiety going into that conversation, and it derails pretty quickly. And so it's interesting because I feel like if they were watching somebody else have the conversation, they'd be like, oh, I see what just happened. But when they're in it, they can't really see it because they have too much invested. And so their trigger happens pretty quickly. If the other person says anything that edges in on a criticism or anything that nears them feeling judged or just too close to something being wrong with the way they said it or what they're, what they feel protective of, their brain goes offline and they can't hold it. Instead of being able to reflect back, that was hurtful or that was incorrect or that didn't land well, or they can't do it. So we're working on being able to hear it, neutralize it, reflect it, hold it, right? Those are the communication skills that so many people don't have. I'm guessing most couples actually could use more of that. So again, increase intimacy. Intimacy is not just sex. Intimacy is like the broader ability to have important conversations that make you feel closer. So many people were never given those skills by their families of origin. They just don't know how to do that. When they start having important conversations, like some people, when they first come into therapy and they start having any sort of real conversations, they get super tearful. Like they just start crying, like waterworks. And they're like, I don't even know what's happening, why I'm crying. And I'm like, it's okay. You're just not used to doing this. It's normal. Over time, they build tolerance and they can like have harder conversations and not cry like on, reflexively. It's just, we're not used to it. That's intimacy building. It's okay. And then as you get used to doing it more, it gets easier. And so as you increase intimacy, you realize your heart rate can stay regulated, you can stay present, you're not going to die. Nothing actually big and terrible is going to happen. And so our goals are increasing intimacy, increasing communication, meaning actually communicating out what you need, what is happening, reducing the tension. They go from 0 to 60 really fast. They get dysregulated. They start arguing. They don't blow up in these big fights. They just shut down and go away, which is better than like name calling or anything like that. But it's also not really that satisfying if you have to shut down and go away all the time. So we're trying to get to the point where they can stay engaged. And so reducing the tension and staying present is more ideal, and tolerating discussion around sex and sexuality. We're also, goals would be build awareness of each other's perspectives and needs. So, right, not just like what your perspectives are. We want to be able to have you be able to articulate what are your perspectives, but also what are your needs? What do you need me to know? Because that's part of intimacy building, is you're not just like your own little person over there. Like, what's the other person thinking? Because when you can articulate your needs, the person has some ability to fulfill them, right? And then you can come forward with those. And then maybe you feel more supported, more known. That builds intimacy too. So that's also what kind of helps the little reciprocity and the back and forth. And then that loop helps, both of you feel closer.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the episode. Wanted to reach out to you. This is Dr. Jenn, and say, hey, if you would like to deepen your own experience with this, there's a couple options. If you head over to pleasureproject.us, you will see several things. There's lots of articles. There are also merchandise items that you can buy if you're feeling enthusiastic. You want a tote bag. We've also got fun cookie cutters. You could also join the waitlist for an upcoming Pleasure Circle, which is a small group intensive that I lead. Would love to have you. If you want to know more, check out pleasureproject.us.
So with Dana and Dominic, it's this slow process, because at times, okay, I once had this cat stay with me on this. I swear it's related. And I remember like she got scared and she like went behind, I think it was like a dryer or something. And man, it took forever to get her out from behind there. There was just like, there was no dragging her out. It was like coaxing, right? When someone is scared, you can't demand it. Like, you've got to just trust until they decide to come out. And both of them have a tendency to be like, nope, gone. And so it's got to be a matter of, hey, I'm going to have a little bit of trust in you. I'm going to give you some information. I'm going to tell you not just like my deep secrets, but I'm going to be witness to you telling me something. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm not going to, so I'm not going to mock you, of course, but I'm also going to show some interest, and I might also actually celebrate you a bit too, because what turns you on should be intriguing to me as a partner, right? It might not be my exact thing, but as a romantic partner, ideally you find some interest in what turns your partner on, because that's like a really good guide for you. Like, that's important information. If you can know what turns your partner on, because it's not necessarily what you just want to do to them. That might not work. We're not all wired the same, right? But if your partner can tell you what turns them on, and if it's texting or sexting or reading erotica or getting spanked or whatever, telling you tales of their ex-girlfriend, whatever, then just listen to it, because it might be really interesting, and it might give you some guidance on on how to reach them or how to tune into them. And so I feel like it's all just information. And so if we can stay out of our own ego, and if we can not be like, let me tell you how I'm going to turn you on, right? It's not all about me. It's actually about you. And if you want to hand me some information and tell me how you like to be turned on, and I'm just here to like, let me learn about you. Let me hear about you. Let me be interested in you. Let me be open to you, right? If Dana and Dominic can hear each other and just be curious. Now, Dominic accesses this much easier than Dana does. He taps into this kind of more naturally. He can find this part of himself much easier. However, he gets shut down pretty fast if she shows any sort of like trepidation or embarrassment, or if she gets pricked by shame. Like I know they tried some role playing, and she kind of went with it, and then she hit a stumbling block and felt some shame about it, and then that like triggered them both getting like shamed, and the whole thing kind of went off the rails. That's part of the problem, is if one person has a wave of anxiety or embarrassment or whatever, ideally the other person holds steady and calms the system, because if they both go running out the door, then it's game over. But either person is available to calm the system at any time. Ideally, that's you're co-regulating. So one person can regulate the other person, right? You can co-regulate at any point. That's the beauty of being in a partnership. So just like if, say, Dana makes reference to something she and her ex-girlfriend did, and Dominic feels a pang of competition or insecurity, and she registers that, she can also soothe him, right? She can tell him that that doesn't replace him. She can bring that in as an erotic element that might be just fodder for him, just information for him. It doesn't have to diminish him. It can actually enhance their sex life if they choose to frame it that way. But it's how the information gets exchanged. It's how the information gets treated collectively that matters. And so I find that when I'm sitting with couples, it's so tender, and I'm so amazed that people choose to bring information into me and that they're willing to do this work. Whenever I get a call, I'm like, I cannot believe that again and again people like pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need help and I'm willing to come in and unpack this with you." Because it's not a linear path, right? It's what they choose to show up with. It's the self-reflection that they do, and then it's the work that we do collectively. I don't have like all the answers. I'm here to ask questions collectively with them. I'm here to shine some lights on things and ask questions just objectively about what I'm seeing. And so, just like, you know, the questions that kind of intuitively come to mind as I'm sitting with them, and then also the questions that come up for them. So, I'm going to ask them, well, what does that do for you? What feelings are you having in this moment? Are you turned on when you hear her talk about her ex-girlfriend? Are you simultaneously turned on and jealous? Are you disgusted? Are you panicked? Are it could be all three, right? That would make sense to me. Actually, it could be everything. When you're thinking about this comes up, it's interesting actually. I'm thinking about the spanking piece, but also when I've brought up dirty talk, when I'm doing my pleasure circle group, typically when I bring up just saying the phrase dirty talk, I usually get such a response. It's so funny. Every once in a while, somebody will go towards it, but oftentimes the first response is so negative, like, I don't like that. And I'm like, really? Do you really not like that? First of all, let's more broadly define dirty talk, which can include things like, your partner saying, "Ooh, I really like that," or "Can you do more of that?" or "Can you go deeper?" And everyone's like, "Oh, well, I didn't realize that was part of dirty talk." And I'm like, well, yeah, but also dirty talk can get dirtier too. But I think that dirty talk gets a bad name. I think dirty talk is wonderful. And I think verbal cues can be quite arousing because it turns the mind on to hear reinforcement of any sort, right? It could be grunting, it could be encouragement, it could be demands, it could be lots of things. But I think our senses are a huge part of sex, and what the mind hears greatly affects what we want and don't want. So as I think back to this couple, one of the things that was coming up is, that Dominic's preference for role playing, and that included some teasing and some spanking. And that sometimes butts up against Dana's tendency to be, a little bit more proper and conservative and feeling a little awkward in those moments with role playing. I don't know that she doesn't have it in her. I just don't know that she's ever tuned in that way. I don't know that she's ever been playful or silly, or I don't know that she's just ever done that. I don't know that she's ever played in that way. And I think she feels awkward. And I think we have to help her build more safety in the relationship. And by safety, I just mean that, like, in a relationship, can you look silly with your partner? Not safety like bodily safety, but more like, are you willing to act like a goofball? Because I think that has to be present for you to do role playing with somebody, because otherwise you're going to, I don't know if you can totally let yourself go in that way. So part of it is I'm reverse engineering. If someone's making a request and the other person is feeling some resistance, I'm not going to just take it at face value as like, no, they don't like that. It's like, what about it don't they like? Are there obstacles that are quite hard as to know, or are the obstacles more of a like, what do we need to deconstruct to understand what the no is about? Because it kind of sometimes it depends, right? If it's like, I feel too self-conscious to do that, or is it that I don't know how to do that, or is it that I don't feel like I'm allowed to do that, or is it I don't feel sexy enough to do that? Because I think sometimes those are the qualified no's that lots and lots of women especially will give during intimate moments. So again, back to the goals of this couple: increase intimacy. Intimacy is so complicated and layered. And when we try to understand what's going on between these two, and it's in the bedroom, but it's also in the everyday, right? How is their relationship looking? How much balance do they have? This couple is actually quite balanced. Like, they're definitely sharing the parenting. They have a lot of trust and admiration for one another. They get along, with various roles, and their finances are good and that type of thing. So a lot of those other things are on board. So I look at kind of the whole picture, because I think sometimes that matters too, but trying to understand how balanced are they in the various areas, and then how does that's the general, and then how does that show up in this particular domain? So we kind of zone in and then take a closer look at how does it show up erotically and what gets in the way, and then try to kind of tease apart and start asking some questions and start doing some challenging about, hey, would you be willing to try something different? Would you be willing? And if not, why? Like, what gets in the way of this particular thing? Is there a barrier? And could you at least try it on maybe for a week or two, of this new way of operating or of interacting? And most of the time I find, if there's context for it and if we have a conversation about it, most clients, if they're invested in the work, they will try. They will try. If we walk into it and there's a rationale behind it, they will actually try something new. Now, if they're being dragged in for the therapy, then no, because they don't want to try something different. If they're overwhelmed and busy, then no, because they'll forget as soon as they leave. They don't want to do homework and they don't really want to change. But if they're invested in the work and they really do want the relationship to be closer, then I find that most of the time they will try to do something different because they want systemic change. So this couple in particular have been quite invested in the work, and they have clicked in and tried various things. And so I really appreciate that. And I do see change happening for them. So as far as goals, I would say their intimacy has increased. I would say each of them have given. I would say Dominic has certainly opened up more, in terms of, he was initially pretty reserved in the first few sessions. He started opening up more about what he actually wanted. I think he felt some trepidation in offering that up, but he did actually start opening that conversation up. And Dana started also being more willing to talk about her sexual hesitancy. And as one of them sort of dislodged, it helped the other one. And so, because once one person kind of showed some good faith, it kind of caused the whole system to open up. So I've seen the two kind of build, and there's like a cause and effect with both of them. So that's the first case I'm talking about, and I hope that was useful. I will continue to drop these in from time to time, and I would love any questions that you might have, and I will be happy to answer about this or any other general questions you have about sex or relationships. So please do leave comments or questions and leave a review for the podcast as a whole. Thanks so much.
Hey, it's Dr. Jenn. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please leave us a review and leave a comment if something struck you. We'd love to get the feedback. It really helps the podcast. And if you want to reach me, go ahead and direct message me on Instagram, or you can reach me at jen@rivieratherapy.com. Thanks.